So I would say with balcony solar, first off, shamelessly imitating a recent What on Earth show, Laura Lynch. We had her on the show years ago. I heard it, and then with our listener suggestions, we got a few suggestions of balcony solar, and I'm sure it was the What on Earth show was a catalyst. What is it? They're small solar panel kits that are designed to hang off a balcony or mount on a building facade. The output ranges from 100 to 800 watts, and that is tiny when you compare it to the average rooftop solar system that people have installed on their homes, like I have on my home here, which is set 6 to 10 kilowatts. Each kit, though, comes with a built-in micro inverter. So this cuts down your electrician bills. Instead of hiring an electrician for complex wiring, you just plug it into a wall outlet, and then the power that is generated from that balcony solar unit flows into your home, and then it offsets the load that you're using. Now that raises issues, and we'll get into some of the downsides. Utilities worry about safety, and they also worry about backfeed into the grid. They are hugely popular in Europe. In Germany, they're called Balkenkraftwerk, balcony power plants, and they're sold in places like IKEA. By the way, Balkenkraftwerk is not a side project of the members of the great German techno band Kraftwerk, but by 2025, now there are more than 1 million of these systems have been installed. And they seem especially like they're spreading like wildfire for renters and apartment dwellers who just can't do rooftop solar because they don't have access to rooftops. And why could it catch on, or why did it catch on? Europe really streamlined the rules. So in Germany, the regulators have made it. Households can plug in systems of up to 800 watts without any kind of major permitting. And most importantly, prices have really dropped. So in Europe, you can buy a kit for as low as 200 euros, range 200 to 900 euros. And that when you're at IKEA and you see that actually puts it into impulse buy territory. Now, will it catch on here in North America? Well, our electricity codes, a little patchier. Utilities often restrict or ban plug-in systems over safety concerns. And part of that backflow is that if a grid goes down and this is why solar systems are designed to shut down and you need someone to work on the transmission line in front of your house. You don't want electricity being fed back to the grid. And then condo boards and homeowner associations can block them as well. And then, of course, what's preventing, much wider commercialization here is just the cost. We haven't been able to shave costs the same way that they have in Europe. An 800 watt unit costs on the order of like $2,000 to $2,500 US. But bottom line is the benefit, the wattage that we're going to provide through, home-based renewable electricity is ultimately pretty modest. So to be clear, it's not going to move the emissions needle or displace much fossil power, and probably much less than what we just talked about with e-bikes. But perhaps the upside is the symbolic impact, and that renters and apartment dwellers, that it gives them agency over some electricity generation. It gets them directly involved in energy transition. And when you see them hanging off all these balconies, it helps to normalize solar power, which still isn't that normalized here in North America. So that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think that equity one is a big one for me, right? I agree that it's not going to hugely move the needle on the amount of solar we produce. But I do think that there is another important dimension of how do you ensure that a broader group of people is able to participate in the energy transition. And so, another way to do that, of course, is things like virtual ownership of community solar projects. So that's kind of another way to get into that. But I think that the equity argument is enough of a reason to say that this is something that we should enable people to do.
I think my comments will be entirely predictable, but I'll make them anyway. I want to start a new company that hangs something that looks a lot like a solar panel, but is just really cheap and made of cheap plastic or cardboard or something that says, I spent my money on collaborative ownership, virtual ownership, because I believe in efficient use of my money and collaborative interest in decarbonization, and I'm not wasting my money on a silly solar panel, which is pointing the wrong direction.
Okay, well, as long as you can actually do the buying of the collaborative ownership, which is still very hard to do in Alberta, then I'm more on the side of that.
Let's start the company. I think maybe we need to, part of it is offering that option. So that's the point. Is that option doesn't exist. And so I agree. I could see why somebody might buy a balcony unit now because I actually don't have that option. If they really had an option that they understood was buying several times more generation that they really had an honest stake in and some kind of voting power in collectively, I think the answer is people would mostly take it.
So I would love for individuals in places like Alberta, where you actually have a decent solar resource, to be able to help bridge the economics on solar projects. Now, we have a whole, as we talked about on our last show, a whole separate issue of what the province has done in terms of gutting the solar industry here through its moratorium. But that still isn't easy. So we need to work on it. But I'd say, David, like, what's the downside of someone, because that doesn't appeal to everyone, something local generation, and this is, to be clear, private capital. It's their own capital. I'm not asking governments to pay for it at some sort of subsidized $300 per ton basis. Just you want to generate a little bit of your own electricity. You're going to use your own money. Your balcony is pointing in the right direction. What's the downside to that?
No downside. Knock yourself out.
Cool. Perfect timing. I got David to acquiesce just before the buzzer.
Oh man, did I deserve that? All right.